So sometimes people will ask a question like this. There was one thing that I could focus on to grow my practice, what would that be? And my answer is often not something that they'd expect. So my answer is very simply, I would focus on emotions. Emotions, what is that? I don't understand. I'm running a dental practice. Okay, let me break this down. Emotions, first, for you as the leader. Second, for your team. So, okay, what do I do with this? First of all, for yourself. If you can learn to manage your emotions, the way you come across to your teams, you can either be inspiring or you can be the biggest problem in the practice. Let me explain further. Daniel Goleman, who has probably the most written on this subject, his book called Emotional Intelligence outlines something really cool. And it's an experiment that was done. It's summarized under the heading of emotional contagion. And you can look this up online for yourself. Emotional contagion is very simple. The study that was done is they took two participants, they sat them facing each other at a table, and they weren't allowed to speak. Okay, so two people were selected, and they were selected for certain traits, and the specific traits were whether they were emotionally expressive or not, or more emotionally flat. Now, they intentionally paired someone who was emotionally expressive and someone who was emotionally flat. They put them facing each other at a table, and they had them fill out a mood questionnaire. And then the experimenter left the room for 2 minutes. They weren't allowed to speak. Came back 2 minutes later and had them fill out the same mood questionnaire. That was the whole experiment. What they found, though, I think is just mind-blowing, is that the mood or the more emotionally expressive person was actually transferred to the emotionally flat person just by sitting across the table from each other, not saying a word. So this concept of emotional contagion is super important. I've talked about this in I don't know how many videos, and I just can't keep saying it enough. If you show up to lead a group of people, and it doesn't matter what you're doing, this applies to your personal life just as much as it does to you running a practice. If you show up to lead a group of people and you are anything less than what you want your people that you're leading to be like, then you are absolutely set up for failure, because emotional contagion kicks in like just about instantly. If you are going to start your day and you are going to have a team huddle, you're going to show up at that huddle high energy, excited, motivating, inspiring to your team, guess what's going to happen to your team? By the end of that huddle, they're all on fire. If you show up grumpy, miserable, ticked off, whatever happened on the way into work, etc., then what do you think is going to happen to your team within the first couple of minutes of you interacting with them? Plain and simple, right? So your emotions are super important in how you lead your team. In fact, that's one of the bottom line, critical foundational pieces of leadership, being inspiring to your team and managing your emotions as a way to do that. So you don't have to be like super charismatic and someone who's just like got that skill. That's nonsense. If you just manage your emotions, you can do, I think, anything from a leadership perspective, because most of leadership is inspiring people to follow you. That's what a leader does, right? And what about your team? Well, if you can help manage their emotions, guess what's going to happen with them? They're going to start to learn that skill too. And by the way, you want to teach them this and help them to understand that they are directly in charge or in control of their emotions, and not just their emotions, but the emotions of everyone around them. So if you can get them to be intentional about this, then what ends up happening is, well, they ride a high during the day. Now, the key factor in all of this is that emotional energy within the team, that is absolutely transferred to your patients. So if I want to have super engaged, excited patients who stay, pay, and refer, the easiest way to get there is for me to manage my emotions, creating an engaged and inspired team who will then create an engaged and inspired patient base. It's actually that simple. If your team is engaged and inspired, which is a direct result of how you interact with them, then what ends up happening is the patients ultimately feel that. Now you know this because if you go into any business and the team, the people that are there are excited, happy, bubbly, it's like they were waiting for you and they always know your name and they know your order, whatever it happens to be. You know, there's a difference between going there and going to any other business where everyone's like looking down and like, you know, you're an interruption in their day and it's like, gee, you know, is it a bad time? Should I like come back? Night and day, right? So if you really had to focus on a thing, even just for the next 30 days to dramatically change the dynamic within your practice and change the sense within your patients of what your practice is about, that's the thing. It's all about emotions. That emotional connection is super important. And by the way, you can go a step further with this, with your patients, and seek to create an emotional connection with them. Seek to intentionally level up their emotions so that when they leave your office, they are in a better state than when they came in. If you can do that, man, your practice is going to change.